guys have seen it. But Mark Zuckerberg blatantly admitted that both Facebook and the FBI interfered in the 2020 election on the Joe Rogan Experience. And, for all of the news coverage, and to some degree rightfully so, over the last 4 years about January 6th, about some of Trump's claims of the election that him and his lawyers were really never able to demonstrate at all. But how about that admission that the FBI came and told Facebook, be prepared for a Russian dump that's coming soon. And then when the laptop came out, you have 50 plus intelligence officers signing on to this letter saying that this is the Russian disinformation. And he admitted to censoring people for that. This is like blatant election interference by the FBI and one of the biggest tech companies out, a part of. He says he created the site to give people a voice. You robbed your fellow Americans of their voice in a very important, crucial point in American history.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was a New York Post columnist at the time that all went down with their exclusive on Hunter Biden's laptop, which turned out to be a completely genuine story, and certainly wasn't Russian disinformation. And the way that all played out was quite extraordinary and pretty terrifying.
But it's not, you're equating Facebook or Twitter with the government. It is not a public square.
No, I'm not.
To be very clear, I certainly was not. Listen, I was not equating Facebook and the FBI, and I think it is reasonable to point out that a lot of these big tech companies were under duress really since Donald Trump won in 2016. All the heads were hauled in front of Congress and threatened up and down if they didn't get this misinformation problem under control. But is the claim here that those intelligence officers made a mistake and really thought this was Russian disinformation?
Here's what I'm saying,
and then realized it was Hunter Biden's laptop?
I think that Facebook, unfortunately, occupies a far too important role in news distribution as a kind of a monopoly. And that's the problem we have going forward. It's a private company that's determining what everybody sees. And they're going to not just make mistakes. We're at the behest of Mark Zuckerberg's obviously incompetent ability to decide what's right and wrong. Or should he, by the way?
Let me name your response.
Free speech is a principle. When we say that Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever platform is silencing free speech, we are not talking about the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects multiple rights, of which one of those is free speech. So this constant conflation of a private company isn't violating your First Amendment. I'm not going to bring up the First Amendment. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go on a platform, I'm going to express my ideas and share news, and if they silence me, they are violating my free speech. Now, more importantly, this argument about, you mentioned there's a fever dream on the left and the right. I want to make one thing clear. Mark Zuckerberg coming out and saying that now we're going to have more free speech or whatever it is he's trying to say, this is not a pendulum swing. This is not the weather vane. Certainly, I do believe the man is just bending the knee to whatever power structure he sees. But if we were actually going to see a pendulum swing in the other direction, they would keep the fact-checking program, ban the liberal news outlets, and only allow conservative outlets to fact-check posts on Facebook. When you look at all sides, when you look at ground news, the majority of U.S. fact-checkers had a liberal bias, and only one, which was associated with the Daily Caller, was considered to be conservative-leaning. And when numerous outlets on the right made attempts to get access through Pointer to the fact-checking system, they were denied that. I just want to...
There's a podcast that just came out on Piers Morgan a few days ago. I found it very interesting. Dave Smith and Tim Pool, and basically the whole panel is a pretty good panel, especially that lady in between this. She made some pretty good points. Anyways, this episode I found it very, very informative. I thought they made some great points about Mark Zuckerberg saying that he's going to put some community notes type of function out on Facebook to verify news and prevent fake news. I just found it very interesting. They basically blast Mark Zuckerberg for all of his past actions. And I watched the whole podcast, found the best moments of it, put into a short little video for you so you don't have to waste your time watching the whole entire podcast. Now let's continue.
The government had backdoors into X and Facebook where we actually got to click the link and go to the login portal for the federal government to go into Facebook to flag posts. And there was an instance where if you said the name Eric Charamella on YouTube or Facebook, your post would be inexplicably deleted. And everybody knew that was happening. And this is Real Clear Politics that it broke the reporting on Eric Charamella. So what we're looking at since Elon took over Twitter and turned it into X, we have consistently seen a dominant liberal or Democrat Party bias on these platforms. And when the problem is, quote unquote, resolved, you get neutrality. There's been no circumstance where we have seen a right bias or a conservative bias or a pendulum swing in the other direction. So Mark Zuckerberg right now is declaring neutrality. He's not actually swearing fealty or kissing the pinky ring of Trump.
Over to you.
The idea that what Mark Zuckerberg is doing is part of the plutocracy. It is part of the oligarchy. They're going down there and giving $1 million each to Donald Trump, Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos. You have Elon Musk, who's been the biggest oligarch of all. They are bending the knee. They're doing whatever he wants. And I wish that on the left and the right, we could put aside politics and say we need a system where big money is taken out and the power is given back to the people, to us. And then we can fight fairly on the issues without.
I think everyone would agree with that. The mass amount of Americans would agree with that. It's the politicians that won't let that happen.
Oligarchs spending millions and millions of dollars to corrupt our elections. And on the right, you don't like George Soros? Okay, let's ban his money as well. I'm fine with that. But Mark Zuckerberg, what he's doing is bending the knee because he is fearful. As Donald Trump said yesterday, maybe he's afraid because I threatened to put him in jail for his entire life. That's the big protect our First Amendment. The guy who threatens Mark Zuckerberg with jail for the rest of his life. A guy who threatened ABC and CBS. A man who threatened Donald Trump Saturday Night Live. He wanted the comedy show canceled. So he is not a bastion of free speech. He is a strongman leader, a potential dictator, and they fear him, but they're about making money.
Things like that. Let's have that conversation. But Donald Trump, if this is Mark Zuckerberg trying to placate or please Trump, and he's settling with, I will let people speak, that's Trump accepting neutrality. If Zuckerberg was actually going to try and play this game that we had seen over the past 8 years or longer with Facebook, he'd say, you know what, we're going to bring on 10 new fact checkers, the Daily Wire, Breitbart, National Review, and we're going to give them preference and we're going to remove PolitiFact and Poynter's authority. But that's not what he's doing. He's saying, you can finally post again, which it's funny because when he basically downranked politics, he nuked his own platform, and it made most podcasters abandon the platform as a place where you couldn't do business anymore. So
how I feel about Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think he's turning more conservative. I do think that he's just saying and doing whatever he needs to build a good relationship with Trump. I think as a huge business owner, as the owner of Meta, founder of Meta, it's in his best interest to make sure that the business is doing well and basically gets along with, at that level, you need to get along with the political leadership, regardless of who it is. When it was Biden, he made sure he cooperated with Biden. Now that Trump's president, he's going to make sure he cooperates with Trump.
Again, you want to talk about
I don't know
money?
what you guys, I don't know
I
what world
agree.
you live in. All my friends who posted about Palestinian issues, about Gaza, the suffering in Gaza and the West Bank, where my family lives in the West Bank under occupation, our stuff is banned. We get thrown off the platform of Meta, of Facebook, of Instagram. Let's not play games here. These are oligarchs who have a financial motivation for what they're doing. Tim, you know that. Dave knows that. Karen, we all know this. We're on board. What are we going to do about it? We live in a new Gilded Age with the robber barons. Are we going to rise up with a backlash and have reform, or are we going to let them control our collective destiny and be their serfs? That's our question.
Hey, look, the thing that was the worst year of censorship was 2020. Okay. And in 2020, I mean, this is when I had a private group for supporting listeners of my podcast on Facebook that got completely nuked because you literally, I remember the video that got nuked were two doctors. This was in April of 2020 who were talking about how the ventilators were killing people. And this wasn't like an accusation of a conspiracy. Nobody was saying that like doctors meant to be killing people. And of course, the doctors realized they were right and ended up changing course. But the point is that had nothing to do with left or right. It was like, we're doing lockdowns. This is the policy of the regime. And if you're out there opposing this policy, you're going to be silenced. And just to the one point that was made earlier about misinformation from Iran or China or any of these things, I'm a libertarian. I don't like governments much anywhere. And all of them are guilty of misinformation and lying. But the point is that we were talking about our government, who were the ones involved in the misinformation, claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. That was the lie.
Yeah.
And so
Now, Elon Musk is paying $2,000 a night to be 300 feet away, or probably more, from Donald Trump. We can't do that. We can't have the same thing. They're all handing over money, and Donald Trump likes money, apparently, from what I've read. And they're able to access and get what they want, which
Again, I don't know who this lady is, but I love her dry, sarcastic humor. She's pretty engaging.
is no ability to have privacy laws to protect consumers, no ability to have new antitrust laws, for example, that are critical to creating innovation so both conservatives and liberals can create new media companies. They can quash us because there's no Oh, there's so many laws that aren't passed. And it's
Rest.
not true.
Then you come to me and you say all these things about Tommy Robinson. And I tell you this, maybe you're right. I have no idea. I'm not from the UK. I'm seeing this story that's been bubbling up for some time now about how your country allowed little girls to have their bodies to be, I can't even describe the things that came out in those transcripts.
despicable,
because
yeah.
even though we're uncensored. No, despicable is an understatement. It was torturous,
I agree
atrocities
with you.
covered by government. So when I see Elon say something like, this country is, the government of this, covering this up, the police covering this up.
He's right.
I'm sorry. And right. So when I see Tommy Robinson in the United States, and again, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm saying we don't believe that the attacks against Tommy are all entirely based on he's a bad guy who did bad things. You may be right. I don't know. I'm not from your country. What I see is your country covered this up. The things that were done to these little girls, I'm going to say it. They put a pump in the anus of a 12-year-old girl to expand it so multiple men could rape her, and your country covered that up and then told me Tommy was the bad guy. And so I'm just like, look, man, I don't know. But when I heard that, I said the U.S. should be sanctioning the UK or doing whatever they can to remove all of those from power. I think they deserve prison for covering this up.
In the Times investigation by Andrew Norfolk, which I think was a terrific investigation, they counted 14 grooming gang prosecutions. In 2022, there were 35 grooming-related convictions in Starmer's last 3 years. This is Elon doing his Elon thing, which is exactly what he does. He takes a small bit of possible problem and mistakes and puts it out, and then Tim gets a hold of it and decides and conflates 3 or 4 different things together so that, possibly you could, and there was a lake, and, it's the same thing that the Loch Ness Monster.
At least give me credit for my own.
But what's happening with Elon is he has gotten a taste of power, and he says, this seems to work here, and I'm going to create all kinds of business. Now, one, he's not a British citizen. It's none of his business. It's none of his fucking business, first of all. He wants political power and the ability to turn into, which I said right when he bought Twitter, a modern day Rupert Murdoch is what he's going for. He wants media power and control for his own self-interest and his own financial interests and his own ability to influence things. If you think, it makes me laugh when you think about the idea of, first of all, they all act like victims. Elon's always on some victim thing that someone's out to get him. When the world's richest people whine and moan about how they're victims, how they're misunderstood, how they don't have the thing, when they have got the power and the influence and the money over everything in their own business self-interest, something has gone desperately wrong with what we are. We have an idolatry of innovators that it has become undeserved for these people. It's all about their men. It's just all about their money. Every single thing leads to some financial.
Hey, you call Elon Musk a genius. Yesterday I watched his show. You called him a genius numerous times. He's not a genius. Piers, you are a genius.
He is a genius.
I say that he's not a genius. Look, it's my first time on the show. I'm just kissing up to you. I do think you're a genius in certain ways. You've had success on different platforms. Elon Musk, my friend, is a cancer to democracy. That's what he is. His goal, and I challenge everyone watching, Google Elon Musk and criticism of China. And what you'll find.
Also, if you like videos like these where I take a long podcast and shorten it up into a few highlighted clips so that you don't have to waste your time watching the whole entire video, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you really want to help support this channel, because a lot of this type of content gets demonetized or shadow banned, make sure you become a member. It's only $2.99 a month, and it really helps support this channel. Now let's continue.
Article after article about Elon Musk refuses to criticize the Chinese leadership. Even Steve Bannon, the philosopher king of MAGA, just said Elon Musk's paymaster is China. Vivek Ramaswamy said in 2023 that Elon Musk is a circus monkey. That's his word, a circus monkey for China. You just have Elon Musk block a budget deal, according to Democrats in Congress, because they had a provision banning investments in China. And Elon Musk wants to build a battery factory and AI storage plant there. Elon Musk's biggest factory outside of the U.S. is in Shanghai. 50% of his cars come from China. This man's all about the money. That's why Piers, he goes after Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage.
Well, look, I mean, the broader point and the reason why Elon has gained so much like hardcore support over the last couple of years is just, again, it goes back to the stuff that we were talking about at the beginning. He bought Twitter, and promised to make it a free speech platform. Now, by the way, my biggest criticism of him is that he's fallen short of that goal, and there are still people who are censored. There are still people who are kicked off, and I don't think he's done a great job of making the rules very clear and then applying them equally across the board. But there's just no question that for so many of us, this was the big fear over the last 8 years, was that we could be silenced. We wouldn't be allowed to speak up and tell the truth as we see it anymore. And he protected a lot of us, or at least gave us the feeling that we're much more protected than we were back then. And so that is going to get like people like me and Tim, who are people who were, let's just say, we were saying a lot of the things that put you at risk of being censored.
Yeah,
over
and
the
also
last few
I would
years.
say,
and that's not a small thing. I think America has many very, very serious problems, and coming off of 20 years of disastrous terror wars and now the proxy wars in Ukraine and in Gaza, I think the last thing America needs to do right now is say, hey, what else can we take on? So look, America is the global empire. We're the most powerful government in the history of the world. We don't need to seize the Panama Canal in order to make sure that we can do business there. There's lots of other ways that
you
we
know
can,
what though, many people believe it is a matter of when, not if, Elon Musk and Trump have a spectacular falling out. Do you agree? And what timeline are you giving it?
He feels like Trump is a one-ring circus and there's only one ringmaster.
I do agree with that. I think eventually Trump and Elon will definitely have disagreements.
And he is irritated behind the scenes, and if you bother him in front of the scenes about it, he'll say he loves him, because why not love the world's richest man who gave you all this money to help you get elected and was critical to that and can be used as a cudgel against other congressmen and everything else. I suspect there will be a breakup, and it will be spectacular, and we will have to endure it, unfortunately. Personally, I would like to get better characters in a new season of